Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I am going to be doing my most anticipated releases of 2022. These are only adult fantasy releases. There are some other books that I'm looking forward to coming out in 2022, and I may talk about them in the new year on just my 22 books that I want to read in 2022 video, but for the purposes of this video I thought I would focus on adult fantasy since that is what I read the most of. I have compiled a list of 10 books that I'm really looking forward to reading in the new year, and I thought that it would be good to put them out now because if you would like to pre-order them or if people are organizing their TBRs, their reading schedule far in advance, then it would be good to have some of these on your radar and know what you would like to read once the new year hits. I think, and I remember this from last year as well, before I was even on BookTube when I was just trying to organize my own reading, I feel like in the publishing industry, we get a lot of information about the books that are going to come out in the first half of the year. And then once we get into the year, we'll get notice or there will be some hype surrounding some of the releases that happen later in the year. So all of these books are stacked to mostly the first half. I think there's a couple for August. So it really only goes up to August 2022. But of all the books that I have either heard other people talk about, I have seen people review by ARCs, or that I have just seen from the publishing houses or from Twitter, these are the books that really fell on my radar. I'm not going to give an incredibly long blurb about all of them, in part because I've only read the Goodreads description when I found out that I wanted to read these, and I wasn't going to memorize 10 different Goodreads descriptions, and also because that will make this video way too long, and I want this to more just be a fun discussion of what I'm looking forward to. But I do have them in chronological order, so I will discuss them in order of their eventual release. And the very first one is one that comes out in January, and that is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan. And that comes out on January the 11th, 2022. And I will pop a picture of that up. I just want you to look at that beautiful cover. That is 100% the thing that first caught my eye. I'm not even really a big cover snob. I don't tend to pay a lot of attention to covers unless they're beautiful. A cover that is not beautiful will not deter me, but a cover that looks like that will definitely catch my eye. This is a gorgeous book. And so once I had seen that cover, which has been everywhere, I feel like they're marketing this really hard, I then read the description, and this totally sounds up my alley. This is a book that follows or is modeled off of the Chinese legend of Chang'e, I think is how you pronounce it. Interestingly enough, when I was looking up how to pronounce that, I saw that it is also the name of the Chinese lunar probe, which makes sense because this is a Chinese legend about a woman who escapes to the moon, or who lives on the moon. And I thought that that was just a really cool fun fact. This book follows a young woman, like I said, who has, I believe, stolen the elixir of immortality and escapes to the moon. And it's about her trying to escape the evil empire. And I believe that there are some elements of romance that get mixed in, but everything that I have heard about it is that it's just a dreamy, lyrical, fairy tale retelling that is modeled after Chinese folklore, and I am really excited for it. Some of my favorite books are Madeline Miller's Greek retellings, and I do believe that this could be a book that might rival some of those in terms of enjoyment. So I'm going to start the year off strong. This is a book that totally fits my personal reading tastes and one that I'm really looking forward to reading. So I think I will probably pick this one up as soon as it is released and make that one of my early reads in 2022. The second book that I'm looking forward to is Age of Ash by Daniel Abraham. So this is released on February the 15th. I know that Alan is really pumped about this release as well. He's a big Daniel Abraham fan. And I have only read one of Daniel Abraham's books. That is the first book in the Long Price Quartet, but I really enjoyed that. And I think that I like the types of things that Daniel Abraham puts into his fantasy novels enough to want to start with one of his series at the beginning. I'm going to hopefully read all of his backlist, but sometimes it's nice to jump in on a series as soon as it's released and have that anticipation and wait for the new entries to come out. I really like that. I think as fantasy fans, we have been burned a couple of times by authors who will not be named, and so it can be nerve-wracking to decide to start an unfinished series, but I really like that anticipatory excitement. There is something so rewarding about following a series from the beginning, having that grueling wait, and then being so excited when the next entry to the series comes out. This is going to be a trilogy, and I believe it follows the inhabitants of a walled city over the course of 1 year. So I'm expecting something that is very high in terms of political intrigue, that has excellent character work, and is going to feel very high stakes. I don't know a whole lot about it outside of that, but that is enough. I trust Daniel Abraham, and I'm excited to jump in on a new fantasy series just as it is beginning. The third entry on this list is The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan, and this one comes out on February 22nd. This came on my radar again because of Alan. He has already read an arc of this book and really loved it, and from what I can remember him saying about it, I think that he loved it for some similar reasons that he loved the Greatcoats series. As far as I know, this series focuses on a magistrate, and there is, I believe, either a plot to bring down these people who are working for the king's justice, or there's some sort of plot against the empire, and this particular justice needs to get to the bottom of it. But it sounds like there's a bit of a mystery element. It deals with themes of corruption versus fighting for what you believe in, which is a theme in fantasy novels that I really enjoy. And if Alan loved it, I also trust in his recommendation enough to think that it is going to be a book that I will really enjoy, and I'm looking forward to reading it. I have already pre-ordered it, and I am very much looking forward to having the opportunity to read it. The fourth book on this list is actually a novella, and that is All of the Horses of Iceland by Sarah Tolmie, and that is going to be released on March the 1st. This, like I said, is a novella, so this is a shorter entry to pop onto the TBR, and I think this one is a bit fairy tale-esque or mythical in origin as well. When I was reading it, I could only think of Evie, because I know that Evie, and I can link her channel below, I know that she really loves horses and she spends a lot of time in stables. She will sometimes send pictures of herself with horses to the Discord, which are always really fun to look at. But as soon as I read the synopsis for this, I thought maybe I can hoodwink Evie into a buddy read, because she joins all the buddy reads, and because novellas are pretty easy to get through, so I don't think it'll be a hard sell. The basic premise of this is that the author has crafted a mythology for the horses who live on Iceland. So I think that there are a particular breed of horses that are quite famous, that are there, that are unlike any other species in the world. And I believe that the author has crafted her own mythology, her own story about how these horses came into being and what makes them special. I really love animal-focused stories. I think, or at least I'm expecting this to be the kind of whimsical retelling that I really enjoy. And so I have added that to my most anticipated list. Next, so in the number 5 spot, I actually don't know if this is going to be the book that is going to come out. I have written it down as Play of Shadows by Sebastian de Castell, which still has a listed release date of March the 10th. But when we did our interview with Sebastian de Castell, that was myself and Alan and a couple of other booktubers, he talked about how he's not sure if Play of Shadows is going to be the book that is released. He discussed the fact that it may be another book in the same series called Our Lady of Blades that might actually release before Play of Shadows, because, and he spoke about this, I think it was something about having a stronger hook at the beginning of a series. Like I said, on Amazon and on Goodreads, there's still a placeholder date of March the 10th for Play of Shadows. I don't know which one's going to come out. I don't know if these dates are going to shift because of the shortages in publishing and some of the complications in publishing right now, but I have still put this on this list because any continuation of the Greatcoat series is something that I am going to immediately want to read. I loved that series. I really enjoyed Sebastian de Castell's writing. Whatever he puts out next, I will undoubtedly add to my TBR. And since this placeholder date is still there, I will keep it on the list, but just be warned that this might not be the book that we're getting. We may get it at a different time. I'm not entirely sure. Number 6 is one that I am very, very excited for. And That is the book Spear by Nicola Griffith. This is coming out on April the 19th. And this kind of just like squeaks in under the line as a novella, I believe. So this is, I think, almost 200 pages, which is that kind of gray area between novella and full novel. But it is an Arthurian retelling. And I have never read a book by this author, but once I chatted about this in the Discord, someone who has read her other historical fiction said that she has beautiful prose, that she is a very well-respected writer of historical fiction, and I'm going to take that at face value. I'm going to believe the person who told me that, and it just makes me more excited for this book. As you may know, if you have followed the channel, 2021 was a year where I was also very excited for a new Arthurian release, and that led to nothing but disappointment. So I am hoping that 2022 is going to treat me a little kinder in terms of Arthurian retellings, and that Spear is going to be the female-centric Arthurian story that I have been looking for. But I will definitely read this as soon as it comes out. I'll probably pick this one up on ebook, and since it's a novella, it hopefully won't take too long for me to get through. But really looking forward to adding a little more of King Arthur to my TBR. Number 7 is a continuation of a series. So this book is Fevered Star, which is from the series Between the Earth and Sky by Rebecca Roanhorse. And this comes out on April the 19th as well. And this is a book series that I started, I think I read it, did I read it this year or late last year? Things are starting to blend together a little bit. Regardless, whenever I read it, I really enjoyed it. The first book, Black Sun, was a complete surprise for me. I picked it up randomly on audio when I was looking for something, and that was a book that had been available, and I knew nothing about it. And I was very pleasantly surprised. It is a multi-POV fantasy story that is based on the culture and folklore of the pre-Columbian Americas, and I really enjoyed it. The characters, I thought, were really well crafted. I liked the dynamics between the characters. The plot was very fast paced. One minor quibble that I had, which I think is very similar to a lot of people who read it, was that the falling action of the novel happened very quickly. Everything kind of came to a head, and the last 2 chapters were kind of these 2 supernova chapters where there was so much action that was happening after a huge buildup, and then the story was over and we had to wait for the next release. But thankfully it's coming out in 2022, and I'm hoping that I will enjoy this one just as much. I may actually go back and read Black Sun, despite the fact that I remember a fair bit about it. I just remember getting through it so quickly and enjoying it so much that I may in fact reread it so that I can go into book 2 with all of the plot threads and all of the different mysteries that remain unsolved very fresh in my mind. But Fevered Star is a book that I'm very much looking forward to. Number 8 is another continuation of series. So this is the only other series continuation on the list, and that is The Hunger of the Gods. So book 2 in the Bloodsworn Saga, which is John Gwynne's newest fantasy series. And this only has a placeholder date of April 2022. I don't know if this is going, again, I don't know if this is something that is going to be steadfast, if this is a date that is still subject to change, but regardless, I will never turn down an opportunity to talk about John Gwynne or to promote John Gwynne's books. So if there is any chance that this book is coming out in 2022, I am going to add it to my most anticipated releases list. I really enjoyed Shadow of the Gods. I thought that it was a little bit darker than his previous books. It is a very gritty, atmospheric, Norse-inspired fantasy, the beginning of a Norse-inspired fantasy series. And the ending, as one comes to expect from John Gwynne, was an explosion of an ending. And it was so good. I feel very attached to the characters in this story. I'm looking forward to a new POV. I believe there's going to be a new point of view in this book, and I'm looking forward to that, seeing if it's someone we already know, somebody whose maybe on the side that we're not rooting for. I don't want to say the good or the bad side, because the characters are definitely a little more gray in this book than they were in the books of the Banished Lands, but just really want to know who else is going to be in it. I'm expecting heartbreak. I'm expecting amazing combat. I'm expecting all the things that I usually get from John Gwynne. I hope this does release early in 2022, but I will be happy to get it whenever it is ready. Just happy to spread the news of John Gwynne, essentially. Book number 9 on this list is called The Book Eaters by Sunyi Dean, and that comes out on August the 9th. And this is one that I will admit had not been on my radar, but when I was looking for books to put on this list or looking for books that I wanted to add to my TBR for next year, when I read the synopsis of this, I was like, whoa, that is creepy and cool. So this sounds a little bit like a blend of fantasy and horror. The essential setup is that the characters in this book live in a world where you can eat novels, you can eat books. And when you eat the books, then you gain the knowledge within those pages. So you can consume books quite literally. You eat them, and then that knowledge remains with you, or those stories remain with you forever. And from what I can tell, there is a character in this book who gives birth to a son who has more sinister powers. He fuels himself by eating the minds or the brains of other people. So this has so many things that I already find fascinating. Ever since I saw the episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer where Willow absorbs knowledge from books of magic through her bare hands, I have always been envious of that. I have always wanted that to be something that I could do. Just imagine you just put your hands in something and then like you get all that knowledge from it. It is something that I have always found so cool, have never forgotten that moment from Buffy. And as soon as I read the synopsis, that is exactly what came to my mind. And though I don't think I would necessarily like to eat a book, it would be really cool to be able to absorb all of the knowledge from books. And then we get this kind of creepy horror aspect as well. I think that this also discusses a lot about women's agency, about motherhood, about the choices that we make. And those are also topics that I really love seeing explored in fantasy, and just sounds like something that I'm going to really, really love. I am looking forward to it. It is a book that I otherwise hadn't heard of, and hopefully will be a hit for me. And then we get to the very last selection on this list, which is a book that I have known about for quite some time because I do follow this author on social media. And that is, and this is a really long name. So the book is called Babel, or The Necessity of Violence, The Arcane History of the Oxford Translators' Revolution by R.F. Kuang. And that is coming out August the 23rd. For anybody who doesn't know, R.F. Kuang is the author of The Poppy War, which is a fantasy series that I really enjoyed, and a fantasy series where I felt like the author's skill as a writer improved from book to book, and I think that you could see that improvement in her craft as you went on through the series. Whether or not you liked the ending, I think that it is undeniable that her technical abilities improved with time. And this is going to be her second published work, I guess her fourth published book, but her second series. And it is modeled, I believe, after The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and then also Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. I have not read either of those books. They are both books that have been on my TBR forever, and I am shamed because I have not read them, but I have obviously, like the rest of the book reading world, have heard a lot about them. So those are two heavy hitters of books to be modeled after. And I believe this follows a group of translators who work within Oxford University. And it talks about the difficulty of translation. And there's a quote at the beginning of the synopsis that talks about how I wish I could remember the exact quote. I'll put the quote up on the screen so that I don't butcher it. But essentially the idea behind it is that you cannot translate something properly without losing something. There is no perfect translation. And so in this book, the leftover ideas or the leftover energy from translation can be translated into magic. And this magic goes on to help England fuel its conquest to become a bigger empire. And the main character of this story is I believe it's a Chinese boy who is living in England, and he starts to work for this translation guild, and he has to wrestle with the fact that he is making it easier for England to colonize the rest of the world. And I think he's torn between his identity as a translator and his place in Oxford against his heritage and the country that he comes from and the people that he cares about. Again, this is not the entire synopsis. This is just vaguely what I remember this book being about, but so many cool concepts. R.F. Kuang did a brilliant job of exploring a lot of these same themes of colonialism, of identity, of prejudice in the Poppy War, and I thought she did a phenomenal job of doing so in the Poppy War. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this translates to a different setting, a different time period, and it sounds very dark and like something that I am really going to enjoy. Like I said, this is one that has been on my list for quite some time because I was excited as soon as Rebecca Kuang announced that this was going to be coming into being. But if you enjoy that dark academia setting, then I am hopeful that this will be a book that will work for you as well. But that is it. Those are 10 fantasy releases that I'm really looking forward to reading, at least in the first half of 2022. Are there any books that have been on your radar? Any books that you have been so excited to have come out or that you can't wait to read next year? I cannot believe that we are at a time of the year when I can start talking about 2022 releases because I feel like I was just looking these up for 2021. But hopefully this helped you decide on maybe some pre-orders that you're going to make or some books that you're going to add to your long-term plans. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you with another video soon. Bye!